Imagine a drone strike thousands of miles away in the Middle East, and then within hours, a tech billionaire in Silicon Valley completely alters their corporate strategy.
Right, and the South Korean stock market goes into an absolute free fall.
Exactly. I mean, that isn't some hypothetical scenario. That is exactly what happened today.
Yeah.
We often talk about the world being interconnected, but looking through this massive stack of global intelligence reports we've curated for you today, this isn't exactly a comforting, harmonious global village.
No, not at all.
It's a tripwire. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you on an exploration of the day's most vital intelligence, cutting through the noise to show you how a single spark in a shipping lane dictates your tech prices, all the way to the deeply polarized reality of the United States' 250th birthday.
It is a really profound paradox, to be honest. We are looking at a day defined by intense global reliance on one another, but simultaneously marked by incredibly deep fractures. Our mission today is to help you see the hidden architecture behind these headlines. We want to look at how the gears actually turn.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start right at the catalyst. Down in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran fired drones at a commercial cargo ship.
Yeah, a major escalation.
In an immediate response, the U.S. Central Command conducted retaliatory strikes. But to understand why the South Korean stock market cares about a single cargo ship, we really need to look at the immediate fallout here.
Well, the immediate fallout is the disruption of a highly fragile 60-day ceasefire deal.
Right.
Global markets had heavily priced in 2 months of stability, just to ensure the free flow of goods and oil. The danger here is so severe that the UN's International Shipping Agency officially suspended vessel evacuations in that waterway.
Wow, so you just have a vital artery of global trade suddenly clogging up.
Exactly. And diplomatically, former President Trump has already publicly weighed in, calling the Iranian attack a, quote, foolish violation of the agreement.
And, I mean, the strain on that ceasefire isn't just coming from the water. The situation on land in the Levant is severely complicating the entire diplomatic framework.
Yeah, the ground situation is deteriorating fast.
We have reports of Israeli airstrikes in southern Lebanon that killed 2 people and resulted in bulldozed homes. But the real structural issue here is that Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz have firmly declared an indefinite presence in southern Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza.
Which is the linchpin of the whole problem.
Right.
Because the foundational terms of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire explicitly require an Israeli withdrawal. So the terms of this peace agreement are being actively defied on multiple fronts simultaneously.
Yeah.
The drone strike in the Strait and the indefinite military presence in the Levant act as 2 massive pressure points on a regional deal that was, supposed to bring a much-needed pause.
Which brings us back to that tripwire effect. The global tech supply chain is acting less like a safety net and more like a single point of failure right now.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like discovering the entire world's internet routing depends on one physical cable running through a crowded intersection.
That's a great way to put it.
Because of the fracture in Hormuz, energy markets are entirely spooked. Oil prices are whipsawing. And that panic is blending directly into a massive tech and AI valuation sell-off.
Yeah, the numbers today were brutal.
Wild, right? The NASDAQ was set to fall 1.2%. South Korea's KOSPI index dropped so fast it actually triggered a circuit breaker before closing down 5.8%.
Just a total free fall.
And SoftBank shares. They plummeted more than 12%, erasing roughly $38 billion in market value in a single day. $38 billion.
We really have to explain why AI and South Korean markets react so violently to Middle Eastern shipping lanes because it sounds disconnected, but it's not.
Right, connect the dots for us.
Modern AI computing requires an astronomical amount of energy, and the hardware itself relies on highly complex semiconductor supply chains. Now, South Korea is a giant in semiconductor manufacturing, but
they import their energy.
Exactly. They are heavily dependent on imported energy. So when a market prices in a stable supply lane and then that stability evaporates, the manufacturing costs just skyrocket and the capital flight is instantaneous.
Which hits the consumer directly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing Apple stock fall 6% today because they just announced price hikes on MacBooks and iPads, specifically citing memory chip shortages.
Yeah.
The physical world is literally breaking the digital market's momentum. But this is where I have to push back on what we are seeing from some of these tech giants, specifically OpenAI.
Okay, how so?
Well, while the rest of the market is in a defensive crouch, OpenAI is reportedly leaning toward delaying its IPO all the way to 2027.
Right.
The reason? CEO Sam Altman refuses to accept a valuation under $1 trillion.
Yeah, a trillion.
He is pointing to the post-IPO volatility of SpaceX as a warning of what happens when you let the public market dictate your value. But look at the landscape. Microsoft and Meta are officially in a bear market. Apple is hiking prices just to survive. Is holding out for a $1 trillion valuation right now just like pure hubris.
What's fascinating here is how the behavior of these mega-cap tech giants has evolved.
Okay.
We are no longer looking at companies operating like traditional businesses. They are operating with the strategic gravity of nation-states.
Wow.
When Altman looks at SpaceX's volatility, he sees the danger of public market panics, like the one triggered today by the Hormuz strike, basically dictating a company's strategic future.
So it's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. By staying private and demanding a $1 trillion valuation, OpenAI is essentially trying to build a sovereign fortress. They are using defensive financial maneuvering to insulate themselves from physical chip shortages and shipping lane closures.
A tech company acting like a sovereign fortress because actual sovereign nations are too volatile. It's a wild perspective.
It really is.
But speaking of nation states, while international borders and global markets are fracturing, the domestic front right here in the U.S. is facing its own intense friction. And it is all converging on the eve of the 250th anniversary of the United States.
Yeah, you would traditionally expect a moment of deep national unity for a 250th birthday.
I think so.
Instead, the intelligence we are reviewing shows a nation wrestling heavily with its own identity and, more importantly, its chain of command.
We are seeing this physically manifest on the streets of Washington, D.C. Former President Trump is previewing what he calls the biggest air show in U.S. history to anchor the celebration.
Right.
But there is a profound physical pushback happening. Several Democratic governors are actively challenging the ongoing federal military deployment to the Capitol by sending their own state-level National Guard troops to D.C.
Which is...
And at the exact same time, former park rangers are organizing competing events specifically designed to highlight erased histories. So you essentially have competing military deployments and competing historical narratives all occupying the exact same physical space.
The deployment of state-level National Guard troops to counter a federal military presence during a national celebration is just highly unusual.
Extremely.
It is a striking, literal representation of domestic polarization, highlighting a fracture in the shared vision of what this anniversary even represents.
And we saw a very literal, visceral symbol of that tension today. A top National Park Service official confirmed that the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, which just underwent a $16 million rehabilitation project, was vandalized.
Yeah, that was tough to read.
Someone took a sharp knife and deliberately cut the foam sealant liner at the bottom of the pool. It is a physical cut to a monument designed to reflect unity right ahead of the America 250 celebrations.
A literal defacing of a national symbol. It tells you everything you need to know about the underlying domestic mood right now.
And that tension over national identity brings us to the courts. Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have two massive 6-3 Supreme Court rulings on immigration that just came down.
And they are sweeping.
Yeah, they fundamentally alter the mechanics of how the border operates. First, SCOTUS cleared the Trump administration to cancel temporary protected status, or TPS, for roughly 350,000 Haitian nationals and 6,000 Syrian nationals.
Right.
This instantly jeopardizes their legal work permits and protections against deportation. Now, Justice Alina Kagan wrote a very sharp dissent on this, specifically stating that the Haiti decision was tainted by, quote, impermissible race-based considerations.
To understand the mechanics here, temporary protected status is a legal designation given to nationals whose home countries are experiencing ongoing armed conflict or environmental disasters.
Right.
By clearing the administration to revoke this status for over 350,000 people simultaneously, the court is enabling a massive administrative and demographic shift within the U.S. workforce and communities.
The second 6-3 ruling is just as sweeping, if not more so. The Supreme Court allowed the administration's metering policy. This effectively bars asylum seekers from physically entering the U.S. to file their claims.
This is a critical pivot in legal history, and it's important to understand how this works on the ground.
Yeah, explain that.
Historically, federal and international law enshrined the right for individuals to present themselves on U.S. soil and claim asylum. Metering changes the physical logistics of that right.
Okay.
The policy allows officials to stand at the exact international boundary line and prevent individuals from crossing it.
Wow.
So by permitting a policy that physically barricades individuals from entering to make that claim, the legal right itself is neutralized by a physical barrier.
Yeah.
Regardless of political affiliation, objectively speaking, these two rulings represent a historic constriction of legal pathways for migrants and asylum seekers.
It is a profound reshaping of the rules. To put it simply for you listening, it is the difference between having the legal right to ask for sanctuary, but being physically prevented from standing in the room where you are legally allowed to ask.
Exactly.
And this theme of who the rules apply to brings us to two other major domestic items crossing our desk today, involving very high-profile figures. First, former National Security Advisor John Bolton pleaded guilty to one count of unlawfully retaining national defense information from his time in the first Trump administration.
Right.
But he agreed to a $2.25 million deal, which may actually spare him any prison time when he is sentenced on October 28th.
It highlights a persistent dynamic in the justice system.
Yeah?
The handling of highly classified national security intelligence by top officials often resolves in financial settlements, rather than the severe criminal penalties a lower-level intelligence worker might face.
Exactly. And the theme of unaccountable power doesn't stop at classified documents. It extends to corporate oversight, too.
Oh, yeah. The hearing today.
Right. In a congressional hearing today, former Apollo Global CEO Leon Black testified before the House Oversight Committee regarding his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Black claimed that Epstein actually defrauded him of more than $60 million by falsely claiming advisory fees were tax-deductible.
Wow.
But the context surrounding this is heavy. The phrase, "please call Leon Black," reportedly appears over 300 times in Justice Department files related to Epstein. Over 300 times.
When you juxtapose these stories, the disconnect just becomes jarring.
Yeah, really does.
You have tech CEOs demanding trillion-dollar valuations, national security officials buying their way out of prison with multi-million-dollar plea deals, and billionaires claiming $60 million fraud in congressional hearings. It paints a picture of an elite class completely insulated from the physical and economic friction that the rest of the population is experiencing.
Insulated is the perfect word, which is why this next piece of news from New York City feels so important to highlight as a direct contrast.
Yeah, the rent freeze.
Right. Amidst all this high-level maneuvering and elite insulation, New York City just announced a massive 2-year rent freeze covering nearly 1 million stabilized apartments. Housing costs are a severe top-of-mind crisis nationally. This is one of the largest tenant protection actions in the city's history.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that local relief is crucial.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that while the systemic architecture of geopolitics and Supreme Court rulings dominates the macro narrative, the baseline reality for millions of people is simply maintaining shelter and stability. A rent freeze for 1 million apartments is a localized survival mechanism against national economic volatility.
It is the ultimate local reality check. But, while Washington, D.C. wrestles with political identity and border policies, we are seeing nature force a very different kind of border cooperation down in South America.
The situation in Venezuela is catastrophic.
It really is.
We have been tracking the aftermath of Wednesday's twin earthquakes. The confirmed death toll from Venezuela's National Assembly is now 589.
God, that's awful.
Thousands of people remain missing. Over 250 buildings are completely destroyed. And the medical infrastructure is buckling, with hospitals at a breaking point trying to treat an estimated 4,300 injured people.
The human toll is devastating. But looking through the logistical reports of the rescue operations, there is an incredible dynamic playing out.
Yeah.
Given everything we just discussed about fractured borders, domestic isolationism, and ceasefire violations, look at the teams physically on the ground in Venezuela right now. You have international rescue units from the United States, Mexico, Brazil, and Cuba.
Right.
They are working around the clock, shoulder to shoulder, digging through the same rubble. It is a fleeting but profound moment of humanitarian unity.
It shows that disaster response operates on a completely different frequency than diplomacy.
Totally.
When lives are buried under concrete, the deep-seated political animosity between Washington and Havana instantly becomes irrelevant to the rescue workers on the ground. It is a powerful reminder that indiscriminate natural forces often force a shared humanity that political structures actively resist.
It strips away all the posturing. And speaking of things that bypass political structures to unite people globally, the World Cup round of 32 is officially set.
It is.
Though it came with a significant reality check for U.S. soccer fans.
It did. The USMNT lost to a heavily rotated Turkey side, 3-2, in Los Angeles.
The strategy behind that match is going to be debated endlessly. I mean, Turkey rotated their squad, and the U.S. still couldn't lock it down.
No.
That 98th minute stoppage time goal by Kenan Ayhan was an absolute dagger. And we have to talk about Arda Güler. He was a star for Turkey, completely exposing the U.S. backline throughout the match.
He was incredible.
Yeah. That loss officially ends the U.S. bid for a historic first-ever 3-game group stage winning streak. But it is not all doom and gloom. Despite the loss, the U.S. still managed to top Group D with 6 points.
Right, they still advance.
Yeah, they move on to play Bosnia-Herzegovina on July 1st in Santa Clara.
The tactical narrative heading into that knockout stage has to be Christian Pulisic's fitness. If the U.S. wants to survive the knockout rounds, managing player fatigue and injury after a grueling group stage is the single most important factor. The margin for error is just gone.
Absolutely gone. And looking at the rest of the round of 32 bracket this weekend, the competition is fierce. We have England taking on Ghana and South Africa facing Canada in L.A.
Big matchups.
Huge. Plus, the group stage action today really cemented the tournament favorites. France absolutely dismantled Norway 4-1, and Senegal demolished Iraq 5-0.
The tactical execution from Senegal and France was clinical.
Yeah.
They're sending a very clear message to the rest of the field. If you make a mistake in the midfield, they will punish you instantly. Both of those squads look terrifyingly cohesive heading into the knockout rounds.
Terrifyingly cohesive is exactly how I would describe it. If the U.S. plays them, they cannot afford a single defensive lapse, like we saw against Turkey.
Definitely not.
Finally, to ground all of this global movement, high-stakes drama, and systemic volatility back locally for you, we have to talk about the unrelenting weather pattern sitting over Dallas-Fort Worth. It's brutal down there.
Oh, man. If you are in DFW, you are finishing the week trapped under a stagnant high of 95 degrees with a low tonight of 78. And according to the National Weather Service, do not expect any relief.
None at all.
No. You have less than a 6% chance of rain, and the forecast is locking in those mid-90s straight through the weekend with zero frontal relief expected until early July. Just an intense, inescapable heat dome.
Which, metaphorically speaking, feels like a fitting atmospheric parallel for the absolute pressure cooker of news we've explored today.
Okay, let's take a breath. So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking for the hidden architecture behind the headlines, and we've walked through a day of staggering extremes.
Yeah, we really have.
We have a tech CEO holding out for a $1 trillion AI fortress while global markets bleed over a single disrupted shipping lane. We have 350,000 Haitians facing the sudden loss of their legal status due to a neutralized border.
We have the sheer irony of competing military deployments facing off at America's 250th birthday party, while rescue teams from the U.S. and Cuba pull survivors from the same rubble in Venezuela. It is a world tightly bound together by supply chains and global pastimes, but deeply, deeply fractured by physical borders and elite insulation.
This raises an important question, and it's one I want you to sit with as you digest all of this today. We are watching tech companies and global financial markets react far more swiftly and drastically to physical conflicts like the strike in Hormuz than traditional governments do.
Yeah.
As we watch the celebrations for 250 years of the American nation-state, we have to ask, are we entering an era where corporate valuations, private fortresses, and global supply chains actually hold more power over daily global stability than traditional diplomacy?
Wow.
When a single delayed cargo ship dictates the hardware prices of the world's biggest companies faster than a peace treaty can be signed, where does true sovereignty actually lie?
That is exactly why we do this. Not just to read you the news, but to look past the daily alerts and show you the tectonic plates shifting underneath. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning the headlines, keep looking for those hidden connections, and we will catch you on the next one.